Who's there? Show yourself. Oh, it's only you. I didn't hear you come in. It's after dark and I'm hanging around a graveyard. Again. On the 26th of March 1658, the Exchequer teller Samuel Pepys was trussed up like a chicken on a table at his cousin's house, while his doctor made a 3-inch cut in his perineum, which is the bit of skin between your testicles and your anus. There's no anaesthetic, so there are also multiple people there just to hold Sam down. The surgeon inserts a long silver thing, called an itinerarium, down the penis into the bladder to guide the knife while it's cutting. And then with pincers, he goes into the hole he's cut and he pulls out a bladder stone the size of a tennis ball. Tennis balls were a bit smaller back then, but it's still a massive stone. Now, luckily, after all that, you don't also have to sit there while the doctor sews you back up. He just dresses the wound and hopes it'll heal by itself. Samuel is bedridden for just over a month, which is about average, but after that, he lives a full life for decades. The doctor will rinse his instruments off between patients, but he won't sterilise them like today. So between that and the pain and the bleeding, this was incredibly dangerous. Samuel was so thankful for having survived that he made a special little case for his bladder stone so that he could carry it around and show it off to anyone who was thinking of getting theirs removed. And he threw a party every year to celebrate having survived, a tradition which I love and think we should bring back. A lot of grown-ups feel a bit sheepish about throwing themselves a birthday party, but an I survived surgery party? That's hardcore. Before anaesthetic, there just aren't many surgeries that you can even do. Amputations is the obvious one. Then there's bladder stone removal, which is what Samuel got. And apparently, they could also do cataract removal. Don't ask me how, I'm not looking that one up. These days, surgeons go to school and train for years and years and get loads of qualifications and degrees. These days, you want a surgeon who's smart. But before anaesthetic, the main quality you want in a surgeon is speed. The surgeon William Chelsedon... It's William Cheselden. William Cheselden. The surgeon William Chelsedon had an assistant with a timer to make sure his bladder stone operations were under 3 minutes. His record was 54 seconds. So, surgeons need dead bodies to practice on. You do not want your first go to be on a live, screaming, struggling patient. Now, if you were a surgeon in London, then you belonged to a group called the Company of Barber Surgeons. It's part trade union, part cartel, part regulatory body. And fun fact, the reason they were called barber surgeons is because originally it was the same guys cutting your hair as were sawing your arm off. They've got all the sharp blades, I guess. Their group was created by King Henry VIII. It's always Henry VIII! And he said they were legally allowed to take the corpses of 4 executed criminals per year from the scaffold in order to train new surgeons. These days, lots of people sign up to donate their bodies to science. But if you get dissected, then you aren't getting a Christian burial. People see it as desecration of a corpse. It's something that is part of a punishment for criminals. In fact, people thought it was so abhorrent that sometimes even executed criminals were too good for it. In 1713, the barber surgeons have to pay a guard so they can go and collect their body. And the writer Bernard Mandeville says that when they turn up to executions, "They have suffered the law," cries the rabble, "and shall have no other barbarities put upon them. We know what you are, and will not leave them before we see them buried." And in case it needs to be said, this is all working class people being cut up. It's rare for anyone in the upper classes to be charged with a crime in the first place. And even when they are, somehow the dissecting rule doesn't apply to them. In 1760, Lawrence Shirley, the Earl Ferrers, was executed for murdering his servant. Although the body was delivered to the surgeons, they made a cursory incision in it in order to claim their right, and then handed the body straight back to the family. Now, 4 bodies a year is not enough for every student to get their own body to dissect. Instead, the teacher would do the dissection on a table in a lecture theatre, and he'd just explain what he was doing as he went. So I hope you're taking good notes. But it's still not enough. There are hundreds of students studying surgery in London every year, and there's only so big a lecture hall can be before you can't see what's going on anymore. In 1714, William Chalcedon, the same guy who can whip out your bladder stone in under a minute, is caught doing dissections for students at his house. He got the bodies by bribing hangmen to let him take them, and he just lay them out on the kitchen table, I guess. What did he do with the bits afterwards? Who knows? For all I know, they're still under the Robert Dias on Cheapside to this day. This is a tangent, but something else I found out about William Chalcedon is that in 1731, there was a guy who was going to be hanged, and Chalcedon persuaded the court to let this guy off if he would agree to be experimented on for science. Chalcedon was researching why people go deaf, so his plan was to deafen this guy on purpose by mucking around with his eardrums and then seeing if he could fix them. And the court agreed to it, and the guy was like, I guess that's better than being hanged, so they let him off. So there was a massive public outcry, and Chalcedon was banned from on purpose puncturing a man's eardrums. They did still let the guy off, though, which was something I didn't expect from the Georgian court system. So, there is a demand in the market for bodies, and capitalism provides. This is a story of how economics causes crime. This is the Resurrection Men.
You ever wake up in the morning feeling dead? In London, one of the best medical museums is called the Hunterian in Lincoln's Inn Fields. Now, they don't allow photography in there, rightly so, in my view, but it's a huge collection of anatomical samples. Animal skeletons, pickled organs in jars, that kind of thing. It's named after the guy who started the collection, a very famous surgeon called John Hunter. He collected 14,000 specimens during his lifetime, and he did one of the first known cases of artificial insemination. Basically the turkey baster method, but he used a syringe. His brother, William Hunter, is even more important in the history of science. His specialist subject was pregnancy, and he publishes a book about it called The Gravid Uterus, which has pictures of fetuses at various stages of development, so that students can get familiar with what it all looks like before they have to deal with it for real. This is the text on pregnancy for over 100 years. In the 18th century, William Hunter starts offering to train surgery students with the promise that you will actually get to cut up a dead body before you have to operate on a live one. He sends his assistants to rob graves and bribes church wardens to look the other way. You'd read about a recent burial, and then you'd go to the churchyard in the middle of the night, dig up the coffin, and pull the body out. Now, at this point, you want to get rid of anything the body is wearing: clothes, shoes, and especially jewellery. In this period, you can be hanged for stealing goods worth as little as 12 pence. But a body? No one's ever written down that stealing a body is a crime, so the most you'll be charged with is, desecration of a grave. Couple of months at the most. Easy time. And then you've got to get the body back over the wall with all your stuff and get it home. This isn't just the odd person every few weeks. To get the information for his book on pregnancy, William Hunter dissected somewhere between 300 and 400 pregnant women over the course of his career. You can't be hanged if you're pregnant, so none of these bodies were got legally. And people knew this was happening. Of course they knew. They'd turn up to their local church and the graveyard would be all wrecked. In the 1780s, there was a man in London called Charles Byrne, who was nearly 8 feet tall, and he knew that the surgeons would especially want his body after he died. So before he died, he made special arrangements to be buried at sea in a lead coffin so that the anatomists would never get their hands on him. And instead, John fucking Hunter spent 500 18th century pounds to pay off whoever he needed to get his hands on Charles Burns' body, which he boiled down to its bones and mounted and put on display. These days, the Hunterian Museum still has his bones. Apparently, they aren't legally allowed to bury them because of the conditions they signed up to when they got them, but they have been taken off display. The thing is, there's economic reasons for crime. And by that, I don't mean, oh, people only do crimes because they're poor, we should let them off. No, rich people do crimes all the time. I mean, in a freakonomics sense, that our economic system makes some crimes profitable. And if you change the economics, you can change people's behaviour. Surgeons are doing this because they can't get bodies any other way. The writer Samuel Warren said, "You expect us to cure you of disease and yet deny us the only means of learning how? Is this fair, fair reader? Is this reasonable?" Over the course of the 18th century, two things happened to change the economics of how surgeons get hold of bodies. The first is in 1752 with the Act to Prevent the Horrid Crime of Murder. Excellent name. Why don't we name laws like this nowadays? This law gives surgeons a few more legal bodies. Now they're allowed the bodies of any executed murderers specifically. Realistically, they're only getting the bodies of murderers executed in London, since you only get a few days before the body is useless for dissecting. So this isn't many, maybe a dozen a year. Still, at least these ones are legal. So after they'd cut up a famous murderer, they'd display the skeleton in their hall, and you could go and see this bone-covered hall like a tourist, like how you'd go to the Paris catacombs today. The surgeons even ate dinner in there. The second big thing that changes how surgeons get bodies is the case of Mr. Lynn. Before 1788, when the authorities caught a surgeon doing one of these crimes, he'd often get away with it. You can't punish him. He's been to university. But in 1788, a London surgeon called Mr. Lynn is charged with taking a body from the Church of St Saviour without Newgate. His lawyer argues that stealing a body isn't actually a crime because no one owns the body. In the end, the court decides he should be charged with the minor crime of disturbing a grave and fined £10. Now, I'd say he got let off pretty easy, but still, people like to get charged with as few crimes as possible. So if it's desecrating a grave that's the crime, surgeons start paying other people to do the crime bit for them. So the market creates this job of professional corpse thief. Now, there are lots of names for these people. You can call them bodysnatchers or grave robbers, but the term from the time is resurrection men. Now, if you're a resurrection man, you're not doing this because you want the body to cut up, right? You're not a surgeon. You're doing this for the money. And you're doing the actually risky bit. So you're going to charge the surgeon a lot of money. Maybe 8, 9, 10 guineas per body. A guinea is £1 and 1 shilling. Any price in guineas you can think of as the same price in pounds plus tip. 9 guineas. At a time when a male labourer might earn 21 pence a day. And when people figure out you can make a lot of money in one night by body snatching, then of course everyone wants to do it. Trying to criminalise the dealers but not the customers doesn't stop the trade. It makes it much more profitable. And like most profitable crime, it ends up being run by gangs. By 1909, there were 2 big resurrectionist gangs in London. One was a Jewish gang run by Israel Chapman on Saffron Hill, but the one we know most about was run by a boxer called Ben Crouch. The reason we know more about his gang is because one of his members kept a diary. Joshua Naples wrote a logbook of what he was up to with Ben Crouch's gang every night. Don't ask me why. You can still read it. It's called Diary of a Resurrectionist. A lot of it is written in slang or shorthand that we still don't properly understand, but a typical entry might be 6th of December 1811. Removed 1 from Barthol to Carpoo. At night went out and got 8. Dan at home all night. 6 back St Luke's and 2 Big Gates. Went 5 Barthol, 1 Frampton, 3 St Thomas's, 3 Wilson. What does that mean? So, Naples snatched 9 bodies that day. 1 from the burial ground at St Bartholomew's Hospital, 6 from St Luke's, probably St Luke's Clerkenwell, and 2 from an unknown graveyard he calls Big Gates. The gang also deliver 13 bodies that night. 1 to the surgeon, J.C. Carpoo, 5 to St Bartholomew's Hospital, 1 to Dr Frampton at the London Hospital, 3 to St Thomas's Hospital, and 3 to James Wilson, who had an anatomy school on Great Windmill Street. These are busy guys. Not all bodies supplied by resurrection men are from graves either. They might go to a workhouse and pretend to be the relatives of an inmate who's about to die or who's just died. The workhouse don't want to pay for the burial themselves, so they won't look into it too much, and they'll hand over the body to anyone who asks for it. Some bodies are stolen while they're waiting for a coroner's inquest. Some resurrectionists even break into families' homes and steal dead Uncle Harry before you get the chance to bury him. So people start burying their relatives deeper, with locked coffins or with stones on top of the coffin. Some churches hire a watchman to keep an eye on the graveyard at night. This strategy doesn't work very well because of the economics of this crime again. If a resurrectionist gang is being paid 8 guineas per body, they can pay your watchman more than you can, so watchmen are easy to bribe, and they often end up joining the gangs themselves. But still, it sounds weird to say, but being a body snatcher is hard work, right? It's a lot of digging, a lot of running around London with naked corpses. So resurrection men start looking for easier ways of getting corpses. Now, this is a London channel, so we talk about London history, but you can't do the history of the body snatchers without recognising that all of this is innovated up in Edinburgh first. The first known body snatchers who murder people are Helen Torrance and Jean Waldy in 1751. That's right, these are resurrection women! Women in STEM! But the most famous people to do it are Edinburgh residents William Burke and William Hare. When they get caught, it gets reported on in the newspapers, and all the London resurrectionists go, "Oh, that's genius. I wish I'd thought of that." And it sets off copycat crimes in London. After William Burke, they call it Burking, and the people who do it are Burkers, which sounds very silly today, but it all comes to a very serious head in 1831 with what's called the Italian Boy case. 3 resurrection men from the Bethnal Green gang are trying to sell a body to some surgeons from King's College London, and the porter there gets suspicious. They've ripped out all the body's teeth, and he's got his arms stuck over his head like he's trying to hit someone. This is a body that would never fit in a coffin. The porter alerts the authorities, who identify the body as belonging to a 14-year-old Italian boy called Carlo Ferrari. Now, later on, it'll turn out that this was a kid from Lincolnshire who just looked like Carlo Ferrari, but by the time the police have figured that out, the case has already got the name, the Italian Boy murder. And this boy clearly wasn't their first effort in the field. When police search the home of the resurrectionists, they find bloody children's clothes, chunks of flesh, and a woman's scalp. People are absolutely furious. Body snatchers have been terrorising grieving families for decades, with basically no serious repercussions from the courts. When one Jewish man is asked to go to the police station to give evidence against these guys, they offer him a cab, which he turns down because it's the Jewish Sabbath, but he walks to the station instead, saying that he would walk to Jerusalem if that's what it would take to convict these guys. 2 of the gang are hanged at Newgate Prison in 1831. One of them confessed to selling almost 1,000 bodies over the course of his career. When they're executed, so many people turn up to see it that they break the crowd barriers, and 3 people are killed in the crush, with 30 more injured. So at this point, the government decides they should probably do something. But we've seen the authorities try and clamp down on this before, and it's only made it worse. This time, they pass the Anatomy Act. Rather than creating harsher punishments for resurrectionists, this act lets surgeons have more legal corpses to practice on. It says that a body's legal guardians are allowed to volunteer it for dissection. Now, families aren't going to be doing this to their loved ones. The legal guardians who are giving bodies to surgeons are mostly going to be workhouses, prisons, local authorities, and orphanages. If a homeless person dies in the street, it's normally the job of the local government, called the parish, to bury them, and that costs money. But now they can give that body to the surgeons instead. If a child dies in an orphanage, then the orphanage can now donate that body to the hospital instead of having to fork out for a burial. Sometimes these are people who die without known family or friends. A report commissioned in 1828 showed that 1,108 people in London, Westminster and Southwark that year, who were buried by the parish, didn't have anyone turn up to the burial. But not always. If someone dies in a workhouse and the family can't afford to bury them, the workhouse can still decide to give them to the surgeons, whether the family consents or not. This law is hugely controversial. You're basically stopping poor people from having Christian burials. The politician Francis Osborne says it gave over the bodies of the poor and friendless to the surgeon. In fact, it had been proposed years ago, but it hadn't passed because people thought it was gross, until resurrectionists started murdering people, at which point it suddenly seemed the lesser of 2 evils. Or I should say, Parliament decided it was the lesser of 2 evils. The sorts of people whose bodies are going to get dissected, of course, they can't vote yet. Maybe if they'd been in charge, they would have done things differently. The Act does stop the trade for resurrection men, though. For the surgeons, the number of bodies they get under the Anatomy Act is still less than the thousands they were getting through the resurrection gangs, but the gangs no longer have a monopoly on the market, so they can't afford to stay in business. The only thing keeping this crime going was the fact that they could charge what they liked. So after 1832, the big gangs split up and get jobs elsewhere. Joshua Naples, the guy who kept the diary of his grave robbing, gets a job at St Thomas's Hospital. I guess he stayed friends with the surgeons. Some of them sell teeth off European battlefields, some rent out horses. Some of them were made extremely wealthy by their trade and left large fortunes when they died. Sometimes I make videos about people in power abusing their position for money, but in this case, the original law that stealing bodies from graveyards is a crime was, morally correct, and it still resulted in a messed up outcome. It actually caused more bodies to be stolen, because before that, surgeons could just get the bodies themselves, and now they have to pay someone else to do it. And that person can charge lucrative, inflated rates. In economics, you'll sometimes hear this called a perverse incentive, a rule that has the opposite effect to what you intended. Basing your rules on your morals is all well and good, but you've got to account for people who have to follow your laws without holding your morals. You have to look at how things actually play out in the real world, or else you're going to end up on your living room floor covered in potting soil on a Sunday morning. You might have noticed I like to dress up for videos now and then. And over the past year, I've been getting better at making nice looking shots with backgrounds and costumes and that. I'm currently lying on a tarp, having my mate pour soil on my face. In the past year, I've referenced Artemisia Gentileschi portraits and current news events. In fact, I made a whole second video about my favourite shots of 2025 and how I got them, and you can watch it now on Nebula. So Nebula is this streaming service for some of my favourite video makers. Lily Alexander and FD Signifier and Abby Cox are on there, and we make stuff there that you can't see anywhere else, or that gets released there a long time before you can see it anywhere else. There are no adverts on Nebula, no stupid pop-ups covering part of my video, in fact not even this plug. With my link in the description, you can get a subscription for £30 a year, where you can watch my best shots of 2025 video, and a video I made exclusively for them last month about why guys used to put their hands in waistcoats in paintings. I hope you enjoy it. I'm not sure I can. No. Okay. Okay, come on, I can do this. It's not that full. Oh, I should have one of them sports top water bottles. That would have worked.
I thought you were going to say a wetted sponge.
Well, like Jesus. I really do have the giggles. Isn't that what they fed Jesus with?